How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Peches, Daf 88 of Masechta Gittin. Third to last Daf of Masechta Gittin. Friends, okay, here's the deal. The first part of the Daf is redunculous. It's like the end of yesterday's Daf. If you want to understand it, I would recommend getting like an art scroll, getting something that has some kind of visuals. Does the art scroll even have visuals? No, I can't. They must have some kind of. Yeah. They got some visuals here. Yeah. I would recommend getting something with like visuals. There are just things here that you can't really explain with words. You have to just see them. Alright, but then we get into some pretty interesting stuff. So we're going to learn two Mishnayos today. Here we go. Alright, Daf Pei Zayin Amud Beis. Alright, let's do it. Hopefully this won't take too long. I don't think this is going to be an hour daf or anything. Shabbos is starting to get earlier again. You know, it's already for the first time in a while. It's before candle lighting is before 7 p.m. So it's right now a little bit before 6 p.m. So it gives me an hour, but I also want to make a phone call before Shabbos. So I don't think this shouldn't be an hour daf. I don't think. I'd say 40 minutes. You know. Okay. So here we go. Pei Zayin Amud Beis at the Mishnah, about halfway through the Amud. Shia miktsas haget. Oh right. Oh dude, this stuff. Uchsafu b'daf hasheni v'edim ilmata kosher. Alright, whatever. Oh, dude. Whatever. Okay, this isn't a big deal. This isn't hard. Okay, if the guy's writing the get, and then he gets like the bottom of the parchment, and there's still more to write. So he just continues on the next column, and then the witnesses sign when the get ends on the second column. So they sign beneath the get on the second column. Okay, Peseder, kosher, it's no problem. Chosmu Edim birosh hadaf min atzad o me'achor beget poshet pasul. Now, normally you'd imagine that you write a document and the Edim sign at the bottom, but these were very creative Edim. Maybe they were like design students, maybe they were like art students, and they were doing like a final project, and they had to kind of like express themselves, and they didn't want to write a normal document. They were going to sign on top of the document, or on the sides of the document, or on the other side of the document, on the flip side. You flip it over and sign it. Well, art students, pasul. Hikiv rosho shel zeh b'tzad rosho shel zeh. Okay, well, let's imagine that these aren't documents, they are humans. So let's say hikiv rosho shel zeh. So you have like two people, and they're lying down head to head. Okay, now swap out the people for documents. You have documents, and the tops of the documents are next to each other. Does that make somewhat sense? Right? Like imagine two people lying down, their heads are like head to head. They're like opposites. So here also you have two documents that you kind of like oppositize. Okay, ve'edim be'emsa, and then the signatures are in the middle, in between these two documents that are head to head. Shnei and psulim, both Gittin are psulim. My neighbor, his family is here. I think they just got here today. They're relatively rowdy. Yanki Lazar. Sofo shel zeh b'tzad sofo shel zeh. Now what if you had fakert? That you put them feet to feet. Ve'edim be'emsa, and the witnesses are signed in between the two documents. As she'edim nikrin imo, so the document with which the signatures read normally, kosher. Right? So if you imagine like you have one document that's right side up, and then you have witnesses behind that document, and then you have another document beneath that, but it's like flipped over, right? It's upside down. Well, I don't even know how to say it. Friends, just look at the diagram. Okay, kosher. Now, Rosho, right, so the top one will be kosher betzim. Rosho shel zeh b'tzad sofo shel zeh. If you have a get, right, if you have one long piece of parchment, you have one get written on it. And then you have witnesses signing on that get. And then right beneath that, there's another get written. So Ve'edim be'emtza, and you have the witnesses in the middle. As she'edim nikrim besofo kosher. So basically, the first get is going to be kosher, the one that the witnesses are beneath it, which is the first one. Okay. Get she'eksavu ivris ve'edav yivanis. If you have a get that's written in Hebrew and its witnesses are Greek, yivanis ve'edav ivris. If it's written in Greek but its witnesses are Hebrew. Eid echad ivri ve'ed echad yivani. If one witness is Hebrew and one witness is Greek, kosav sofer ve'ed kosher, as we've seen a few times now. If the scribe wrote it and a witness signed it, it is kosher. Ish ploni aid kosher. If somebody signs it, so and so witness, that's kosher. Ben ish ploni aid kosher. He says the son of so, right? So mini ish ploni aid is like Ruvain aid, that's kosher. Ben ish ploni aid is like Ben Yaakov aid, that's also kosher. Ish ploni ben ish ploni v'lo kosav aid. If he just writes Ruvain ben Yaakov and he doesn't write the word aid, kosher. That's oichet fine. And this is taka how the fellows of clean knowledge in Jerusalem, that's how they would do it. I live in Yerushalayim. There are some, I think that probably close to where I live, there are probably some Nikiyei Hadas. Let's say that. So that's how they do, because they were very pashut people. They didn't want to write anything extra, So you're right, Reuven ben Yaakov, that's enough. Kosav chanichoso v'chanichoso ksher. If they use like their last names, their surnames, so that's fine. Okay. Now says Frekti Gemara. So in the first example of the Mishnah, where we're talking about where he's writing the get and he gets to the bottom of the column, but there's still more to write, so he goes on to the second column and he finishes up the get on the second column and he signs beneath where the get ends on the second column. So we said that's fine. But why is it fine? Maybe I should be concerned that what we're witnessing here is an arts and crafts project. That maybe it was actually two separate gittin. There was a get on the right side, and there was a separate get on the left side. And what you're seeing is an arts and crafts project. It came with some scissors, maybe some tape, some glue epis, maybe some glitter. And he starts cutting. And, so from the first column he leaves the time, and I guess maybe some of the writing. He cuts away some stuff that he doesn't like, maybe some clauses there, whatever, he doesn't like it. Cuts away the witnesses from beneath the first column. Then he goes to the second column, starts cutting away the time at the top of the second column, and he's basically what you're witnessing, what you think is just one get that started on one column and continued on to another column. Maybe actually it was two gittin, and he started cutting away the parts from the whole sections from the bottom of the first column and whole sections from the top of the second column, and that's really what you're experiencing, is two gets that was merged into one. Okay. A moija, as we like to call it in my family. So maybe there's actually two entirely separate gittin. And you have the time that was from the first get, and you have the witnesses on the second get on the second column. Now you cut out the time at the top of the second column. And you cut out the witnesses at the bottom of the first column. And there's your arts and crafts get. Omer Abba, Omer Rav, Kishesh Revach Milamata. Says Abba, Omer Rav, that it's talking about where there is space. There has to be space at the bottom of the first column. So it's clear, if there was arts and crafts going on, there wouldn't be any space at the bottom because everything was cut away. Vidilmazman Tibasro Megiz Gaze. Okay, but still, what about the second column? Maybe, how do you know that at the second column he didn't just do some arts and crafts and cut away the time at the top of it? Well, just like we just said, at the first column there's extra space. Talking about where there's space at the top of the second column. So basically there was no arts and crafts going on. But wait, maybe he wrote the first column and then he changed his mind. He said, you know what? Life isn't so bad with my wife. You know what? Let's stop writing the get in the middle. And then maybe he picked it up later on, and that's not okay. Right? I'm sorry. V'duma imluche imlich v'chosav. Right? Maybe in the middle it kind of changed his mind, and then he picked it up where he left off on the second column later on, after he changed back his mind. Well, the last words of the first column are hareat, and the first words of the second column, right? Again, the last words of the first column are hareat, and the first words of the second column are muteris, which means, like, clearly it was one sort of flow of words. If he did it in two sittings, he wouldn't have just stopped in the middle. In the middle of hareat. So Viduma is Ramile, but maybe he did stop in the middle of hareat, and he just picked up from muteris when he got back to it at another time. Kuliyai lo chashina. We're not so concerned about such a sort of random case. Rav Ashi, an unlikely case. Rav Ashi Omer diadia be mitachta de Megilta. Rav Ashi says, what was this again? Diadia be mitacht. What was that? I don't remember what that is. Kulu kashus. What? Oh, wait, 1 second. Oh, right. This is where you could see like the stretch marks of the document. I guess when they would like make like the parchment, they would like stretch it out somehow. And if you could see the stretch marks of the the edges of the document on the document, it means that there was no arts and crafts. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Now, Chasmu Eidim Barosh Hadav v'chulei. Okay, so we had said that if the witnesses sign at the top of the document, or on the sides of the document, or if they flip it over and on the other side of the document, in those cases it doesn't work. Ini, is it really so that you cannot sign on the side of the document? For Rav Chosim minatzad, but Rav would sign on the side of the document. Chosim b'shegago klape ksav. Well, Rav, when he would sign on the side of the document, the top of the letters would be facing the body of the text, right? I don't really know how to explain that. I guess, meaning it's not talking about where, I don't know how to explain that, where the tops of the letters were facing the body of the text. Okay. Ella ha dikatoni hikif rosho shel ze bitzad rosho shel ze. But 1 second, in our Mishnah we said that if you put the two documents, the two Gittin, head to head, and the Eidim are in the middle, Shneim psulin, they are both psulin. But Vilechze, why should they be both psulin? Let's just see. Heiminayu klapik sav, which one of the two documents that are head to head, or the two gets that are head to head, which one is the top of the signatures between them facing? Vilis kasher. And that get will be the one that's kosher, because it seems that all that matters is the direction in which the top of the letters are facing. So hasam durami leki ibra. Well, in that case, the signatures were actually perpendicular to the writing of the document, so they weren't the top of the letters weren't actually towards either one of the Gittin. If that's the case, Sefer Dikatoni, when the Sefer says Rosho Shelzeh, B'tzad Sofo Shelzeh, that if you have one get, and then beneath that is you write another get, so the top of the second get is by the bottom of the first get, V'ha'edim be'emtza, and you have the signatures in the middle, as sha'edim nikrin b'sofo kosher. Basically the first get, the one that the witnesses would be at the end of, and be read together with at the end, that is the kosher, i.e. the top get. But if the signatures are perpendicular to the text, la bahade high mikriv, la bahade high mikriv, well then they're not going to be read with either one of the Gittin, because the signatures are perpendicular to the Gittin and not sort of read together in one flow with the Gittin. So Ella Rav Bidiske Avachosim, rather, okay, scratch that. When it says that Rav would sign on the side of the document, it means for like some court summonses, but not for like actual Gittin or anything like that. Just like when summonsing people to court. So then on that document he would sign on the side, but it has nothing to do with Gittin. Okay. Get sheksavo ivris v'chulei kosav sofer ve'ed kosher givaldik. We've seen this. We've been waiting for this for ages, right? We've seen this a bunch of times. Kosav sofer ve'ed kosher. That if a scribe wrote a get and you have one witness, it's kosher. Rabbi Yirmiyah chosam sofer shaninu, as we've seen, says Rabbi Yirmiyah, no, it's talking about when the scribe signs it together with one of the witnesses. Rav Chizda amani Rabbi Yossi, of course we've seen that Rav Chizda's opinion is that this is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi as opposed to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi, who says that mile lo mimshon l'shaliach. Hahi ksubas chasanim, there was a ksuba that came before Babao, that they knew who wrote the ksuba, the body of the document, and they knew one of the witnesses. So Rabbi thought to say that it's kosher because the Mishnah says that kosav sofer ve'ed kosher, that if you have the scribe and one of the witnesses signs it, it's kosher. Rabbi Yirmiyah says to Rabbi Bo, chosam sofer shoninu. No, the sofer signs it together with one of the edim. I.e., there are two witnesses, and you have to recognize both signatures. It's not enough simply to recognize who wrote the body of the text and only one signature. Okay. Kosav chanichoso v'chanichoso kosher. If you use surnames, now apparently a surname would be like basically, you would just use like your father's name for a few generations. So in the article they gave an example. Right, Mordechai. Right, it says Ishu di'aya b'shushan abira u'shma Mordechai ben Shim'i ben Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish Ishimini. Right, so if, for example, Mordechai would sign Mordechai ben Kish, right? Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish, but he just, for a few generations, they just stuck with Kish, right? So they would just, in their family, they would just go, right? Their surname right now, we have things like Raps and Goldsmith, but back then it would be, Motche ben Kish. And his children would be also Chaim Yankel ben Kish. Okay, fine. So, Toner ban Chanichas, Ovis Gittin ad Yud Doris. So you can use sort of Kish, for example, for up to 10 generations. You could still be riding on Kish. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer Gimel Doris. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, no, you can only do that for 3 generations. After that, you got to come up with another name, another family name. Or Gimel Doris. After that, possible, you can't use it anymore. Like who does the following statement of Reb Chanina go? Kosav Chanichas Ovis Gittin ad Gimel Doris. That you can use sort of a grandfather's name up to 3 generations. Kiman Kubshim ben Elazar. It's like Kubshim ben Elazar. Okay, so Amar of Huna says, Huna my kra. What's the pasuk? Kisolid bonim uvnevanim vinoshantim. That you can have your name, your children's name, your grandchildren's name, but after that already it's too much. It's too old. You can't use it anymore. So now we get into shtickle agarita kind of stuff. Omer B'Shur ben Levi says B'Shur ben Levi. It's related to Kisol Banu V'Nevanim. It says B'Shur ben Levi Lo Charve Eretz Yisrael Ad She'avdu Ba Zayin Batei Dinim Avodah Zarah. That Eretz Yisrael was only destroyed after 7 Jewish courts served the Getchkis. Ve'elu Hein. These are the 7 courts. Yerovam ben Navat 1. Uvaisha ben Achia 2. V'Achav ben Omri 3. Ve'eu ben Nimshi 4. Ufekach ben Rimalyo 5. Menachem ben Godi 6. Voshe ben Elah is number 7. Shneimar, as the apostle says, Umlala Yoledis Hashiva. That after these 7 courts served the Getchkis, then things were modno. Nafsha Bo Shimsha Bod Yomam, and then things were modno. Bosha v'Chafera, and things were modno. Omer Ami says about Ami Mikra. Where do we have a pasuk for this? Ki solid is you, right? You will have children. That's 1. Bonim is plural. That's another 2. That's 3. Uvnei, also plural. 5. Bonim, another 2 is 7. Okay. Rav Kahana Rav Asi l'Rav. Rav Kahana and Rav Asi asked Rav. Ksiv be Hoshea ben Elah. It says regarding Hoshea ben Elah, Vayasa Rab b'nei Hashem, that he did things that were modno. Rak lo kemalchi Yisrael, just not as bad as some of the other Malchi Yisrael. They did things that were even more modno. Uchziv, and the pasuk says, nonetheless, even though there were other Malchi Yisrael who did worse, but Olav by Hoshea ben Elah, Allah Shalmaneser v'Gomer, that's when Shalmaneser came and things were modno. Omar lehu, So the kasha is, if the other kings were worse, how come Hoshea got in trouble? So Rav answers, he says to them, Osun Pardesios, Shoshiv Yeravam Aladrachim, Kidei Shlayali Yisrael Regel, that Yeravam put officers on the roads to Jerusalem, making sure that none of the Yidden would be Ola Regel in Yerushalayim. So, but Hoshea Vitlan, so Hoshea got rid of those officers. But even though there was now, the ability to be able to go to Yerushalayim to be Ola Regel, it wasn't particularly popular. Though Ola Yisrael Regel, they didn't go. Right? Yeravam put officers preventing them from being able to be Ola Regel. Hoshea removed those officers, but there was no interest. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter says, Osan Shonim Shlo Ola Yisrael Regel, on account of those years that the Yidden were able to once again be Ola Regel. The officers were gone. Yelchu Bashevi, but they didn't go, and for that reason they will go into captivity. Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Mar Ukva, V'amilo, Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav Yirmiyah, Darish Mereimar. Maidich said, what does the pasuk mean? Vayishkod Hashem ala ra'ah, vayivia aleinu, that the Eibishter brought the evil upon us early, quickly, prematurely. Ki tzadik Hashem Elokeinu, because the Eibishter is righteous. Mishum tzadik Hashem Elokeinu, vayishkod Hashem ala ra'ah, vayivia aleinu. What, because the Eibishter is righteous, that's why he brought punishment upon us early? I don't understand. That sounds like it would be a very not nice thing to do. So, Elat Staka Asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, the Eibishter did a righteous act with the Yidden, Shehiglo Galus Tzidkiyahu, V'adayin Galus Yichonya Kayemis, that the exile of Tzidkiyahu, the exile of Yichonya was first, and the exile of Tzidkiyahu was later on, but while there were still exiles, here's my neighbors. What? My neighbors, Yanki Lazar. So while there were still exiles from Yichonya in Bavel, Tichsiv Begalus Yichonya, that it says by the Galus of Yichonya, Chorosh v'amasker elef. Chorosh, and that's a reference to the caliber of the Talmidei Chachamim who were exiled during the first Galus, for the Galus of Yichonya. They were called Chorosh, deaf, Shebishasha Poschen Asu Akol Kecharoshin, that when they would start to talk, everybody would just be silent. Masger, Kevon Shesogrin Shuv Einem Posken. When they close a halacha, they say this is the halacha, nobody is going to reopen it. That is the law has been set. Vichama elef, 1,000 of them. So the Eibishter did a chesed by making sure that the final exile was, while the initial exile was still, people, the Talmidei Chachamim from that exile were still there to be able to teach Torah to the Galus Tzidkiyahu. Ula Amar says, Ula Shektim Shtei Shanim V'noshantem, that the righteousness that the Eibishter did was that he exiled us 2 years before V'noshantem, which is Gematria 852. So after 850 years, because if it would be it says Kisol Banu V'nevadim V'noshantem La'aretz, and then it says, right, Abed Avod Tovidun Maher, that you will then be destroyed. So if it would have been 852 years, then we would have been destroyed. But we were exiled after 850. So therefore we didn't get to the point of destruction. Amar v'acha bar Yaakov shmamina mehera demari alma tam nemei v'chamshim v'tartihu. We see when it says ki avod tovedun maher, quickly you will be destroyed. That's after V'noshantem. V'noshantem b'gematria is 852. So quickly is 852. I guess years for the Eibishter. Okay, fine. Okay, now we get up to the second Mishnah of the day. Get me'usa, a forced get, right? If they force a fellow to divorce his wife. Now, a fellow, when he divorces his wife, it can't be coerced. He has to ultimately say rotza ani, but we can apply pressure so that he will say rotza ani, right? Until he says that I want to give a get, unfortunately, it doesn't work. Oh, I forgot to do that. Ooh, that could be problematic. What should I do during? One second. Okay, hopefully that's a solution. Okay, fine. So yeah, it has to be ultimately willing. We can apply pressure and whatever, but ultimately at some point he's gonna have to say, I'm interested in divorcing my wife. So now, get me'usa b'Yisrael kosher. So if a Jewish court forces a fellow, now, so whenever we're talking about forcing over here, it means ultimately forcing him until he gets to the point where he says, I'm interested. So if a Jewish court forces a fellow to give a get, kosher, that is kosher. But if a Gentile court forces a yid to give a get, pasul, it is pasul. But even by the non-Jewish courts, chovtin also, they can beat him up, and say to him, asay mashu Yisrael, do what the Yidden are saying to you to do, right? So even though, they can't force him, but they can say, they can force him to do like the Yidden want. I guess it's kind of like a loophole. Because ultimately it's not they're not acting on their own behalf, they're acting on behalf of the Yidden. Omer of Nachman says, the Gemara there, Rav Nachman says, Amar Shmuel, the name of Shmuel, get ha'ma'usa b'Yisrael Gittin kosher. So a get that is forced by a Jewish court, so assuming that there's proper grounds for divorce, so it's a kosher get. Shelo Gittin, but if it was improper, so then posel, the get is posel. Ufosel, but nonetheless, it would be posel min kahuna, right? She wouldn't be able to marry a Kohen anymore. Uvovdei kochavim, and by in oved kochavim, kedin, right? And if it was forced by an ovdei kochavim, so even if it was a valid reason for divorce, posel ufosel, it is a posel get, and it will also invalidate her from being able to marry a Kohen. Shelo kedin. Now, if a non-Jewish court forced a yid to give a get and there was no proper basis for divorce, afilu reach haget ein bo, so then there's nothing. It's nullified. It's as if nothing happened at all. She could still marry a Kohen. Fine. Afilu reach haget ein bo. Monafshach. Now we say, I don't understand. We're saying that if a secular court forces a yid to give a get and there was proper grounds for divorce, so we say that by a secular court, the get is posel, but she will not be able to marry a Kohen. So Manav Shachan understand. If the secular court is able to force a yid to give a get, so it's kashuri namilis kasher. So why is it posel? It should be a kosher get. If they're unable to force a yid to give a get, mifsolo lifsil. They're not able to compel a fellow a yid to give a get, so then then she should not be posel from marrying, but she should still be allowed to marry a Kohen. So Amr of Misharshia, so it says of Misharshia Dvar Torah that mida oraise get meusa of the kochavim kosher. Mida oraise says of Misharshia, a get that is forced upon a yid by a secular court is kosher. Okay, well, if that's the case, then why are we saying that it's possible? So that we don't have Jewish women going and going to kind of Gentile individuals, and having them force the fellow to give her a get. If that's the case, shelo kedin, afil reach haget ein bo. But if that's the case, that really means the oraise, the secular courts are able to force a yid to give a get. So then when we say that if they do it, if there was no grounds for a divorce, so then we say, afilu reach haget ein bo. It doesn't even pass her from kihuna. But v'neheve shelo kedin ki Yisrael, umafsil nami lifsil. But if we're saying that really means the oraise, the secular courts can force a yid to give a get, well then, if it was shelo kedin, why don't we say that it's just like if the Jewish court forces him shelo kedin, well then it's a posel get, but it's nonetheless posel min kahuna. So let's say also, by the secular courts, if they force the fellow to give a get, it should be the same halacha, that it's posel min kahuna. So Ella, Hadra Misharsha Badusai. But Misharsha was just joking. Really, the secular courts are unable to force a fellow to divorce his wife at all. So now a yid to divorce his wife at all. So if that's the case, so then even if it was bidin, even if there was grounds for divorce, well then it should not be posel. We said it's posel, that the get is no good, but it's also posel menakuna. It should not be posel menakuna. So how come we say that it is posel menakuna? Kidin b'chidin di Yisrael michalif, because we're concerned that you will sort of swap, plug and play, switch around, when there was grounds for divorce, whether it was forced by a secular court or by a Jewish court, and therefore, if we say that when it's by a secular court, it's not posel, so I might think that also by a Jewish court, it is not going to be posel menakuna. But shalokadin b'chadin Yisrael lo michalef. But if the secular court forces a yid to give a divorce, a get, when there was no grounds for divorce, there we don't have to be, there we could say it's even not posel menakuna. She could still marry a kohen, and we're not concerned that, well, then maybe by Jewish courts, when they force a fellow with good reason, we won't say that, well, it should not be posel menakuna, because after all, a secular court, when they force without reason, it's not posel. So, okay, we're not concerned that that's going to happen. So, therefore, when a secular court forces without reason, it is afilu reach haget ein bo. Okay, that got a little bit technical there. Abai found his Rebbe Rav Yosef who was forcing a fellow to give a get. But Abai says to Rav Yosef, but we are mere hedyotis, we are not expert judges, right? Meaning a mumche, we're going to learn about Masechta Sanhedrin, that mumchin, I think be'etzim is, had to be handed down from one generation to the next. Smicha, right? One, right? Moshe Rabbeinu gave smicha to Yoshua, and it was a chain. I believe that chain ended with Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, the Gemara and Daf Yudal Masechta Sanhedrin describes, and it's one of the Asar Ruge Malchus. Anyway, so I don't think there was, at that point I imagine there was no smicha anyways, but also in Bavel you can't give smicha. So Abai was saying to Rav Yosef, I mean, we don't have smicha, right? Therefore we're ultimately considered hedyotis here in Bavel. So how can you force somebody to give a get? Vitani, we learn in a brisa. Reb Tarfon would say, agurios shall ovdei kochavim, where you have courts, right, gatherings for courts of right, secular courts. Even if the laws of the secular courts are identical to that of the Jewish courts, you cannot rely upon those courts. You cannot go to those courts. Shenemar, as the apostle says, these are the statutes that you shall place before them, before the Jewish judges, not before the secular judges. But alternatively, before them and not before adjotis. And we are simply adjotis. How can we act as bezdin to force a fellow to give a get? So Omar Lei, so Rav Yosef says, well, we're just serving as the messengers from the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael. Just like we're going to learn Masechta Sanhedrin, but the first Mishnah of Masechta Sanhedrin makes a distinction between hodos v'alvos, monetary things as opposed to gizelos v'chavolos, right? Thefts and damages, right? These are like, loans and things versus thefts and damages. So, since by loans, they can be judged in Bavel, so here also we can judge by Gittin. But one second, so why then can't we judge for thefts and damages in Bavel? So, well, we serve as their agents by things that are common, like Gittin, like hodos v'avos. Things that are less common, I guess gezelos v'chavalos are less common. We do not serve as their messengers. Friends, that was daf peiches of Masechta Gittin. The first part of the daf was some of that crazy, weird document, visual stuff. Then we got into some interesting agaritas about the destruction, right, the exile of the Yidden from Eretz Yisrael. Then we got into the distinctions with forcing a fellow to give a get. We said that a Jewish court can force a fellow to give a get, but a non-Jewish court cannot. Friends, that was daf peiches of Masechta Gittin. Stay tuned for tomorrow, daf peites, the second to last daf of Masechta Gittin.